Well, hello and welcome back to Jones Financial Talk. This is Nick Jones from Jones and Associates Premier Financial Solutions. Listeners, if you'd like more information about what you hear on our show, we would love for you to go to our website, jonesfinancialtalk.com. Look around there. There's lots of great information. You can actually click on the radio page. You can suggest topics for our shows. You can download our content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. But if you don't want to go to the website, you can just listen to us on the radio and pick up the phone and give us a call if you have any questions at 541-500-4321. Now, today I came up with, I think, a pretty good topic. Lots of people, prospects mostly, and clients have asked me about how do I retire early? I mean, I feel like as time goes on and we're further and further away and disconnected from COVID, thankfully, lots of people are just like, I want to retire early. What are the things I need to do? How can I make this happen? Can I do this earlier than I originally expected? And the answer to that is yes, with proper planning. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of different things and topics that we are going to discuss today to help you achieve that main goal. And as always, I'm going to bring my co-host, Mr. Tony Shore, in to help us talk more about that topic. Tony is not that far away from retirement. He is not. He's not that old, but he's not that far away because he's been planning correctly.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I'm planning on retiring at, let's say, 67, and I just turned 60, and my company downsizes, or I have a health issue, or I all of a sudden realize, man, I really don't want to go on any longer. I want to retire now. That could be a tough situation to be in for any of us, but there are ways to make it happen. And having an initial plan in place for retirement is got to be hugely helpful. And I'm glad we're talking about this. Plus, some people just want to retire earlier, right?
Yep, it's just happening more and more regularly. I feel like it's one of the main topics of conversation when people come into our office, Tony, and so I think it's important. It can happen. There's lots of things that you can and can't or shouldn't do if you want to put yourself in a situation to retire early. I think before we get into maybe a lot of that content, it's probably understandable to most that the main thing that's going to change the ability for you to retire early is having a good plan in place. And part of that is, unfortunately for many people, being on a fixed income and having a budget that's very static that you can definitely count on. And so you've got to have realistic income expectations for this to really happen. That's one of the main points.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a good discussion, but don't worry, Nick, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here doing the show with you each week. As long as the voice holds out, I'll do the show with you, regardless of what happens. I'll be here doing the show. Now, you might not be here, but I'll just be here, and the Nick Jones box will be blank, and I'll be going, Nick. Nick will be retired.
I'll still be doing the show too.
No,
we've been doing it for so many years in this area, Tony. We got to continue it on.
Plus, you're a lot younger than I am. You're going to be going for a long time, and I know you have a great staff there to help you out. And that's going to be part of our discussion too. I'm sure is succession planning. If you own a business, what's going to happen? Do you have a plan in place? And that is key. And just like with Jones and Associates, succession planning, all about that from your brother and.
Yep.
People, your family has been doing it a while. So I think that's really, really important. And before we get into that, how have you been though, Nick? Have you been keeping busy, staying out of trouble?
Oh, definitely. It's always busy here in the Rogue Valley. And, I am very thankful that so many people work with our firm and so many people listen to the show, because it drums up lots of great business and also lots of questions. And this is a good way for me to be able to continue to sharpen my own saw and make sure that I'm sharp, on a day-to-day basis. So
sure,
it's been great. The radio has been a good thing for us. And so
yeah,
I'm always excited to do the show, and I hear lots of great feedback, and we appreciate you listening.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I know you love hearing from people too. So listeners and viewers out there, if you watch the show on YouTube or if you listen on the radio or one of the podcast sites like Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, give Nick in his office a call. Nick, I know you love to hear from people, answer any questions they might have, especially regarding retiring early or moving up your retirement date. That's what we're talking about today. So where do you want to begin with this topic?
Well, clearly, you probably need to start somewhat early thinking about this. And lots of people come into our office at a younger age and want to save money. And it might not necessarily be because they want to retire early, it's because they just don't need the income, or they know that they're going to use that extra revenue sometime in their life, right? But the biggest point is, you've got to save a lot early on if you're going to be able to retire comfortably, at the age of, say, 60. And so there's no magic number. But really, before we start, I think the main thing is you've got to project out how much you actually need to live on. And the less you need to live on, the better your chances are of doing this sooner. And if you've been frugal, and if you've saved well, and if you've earned respectable amounts of return, then it's totally doable, Tony.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know. And it is doable. You don't have to panic, but you do have to work with a financial professional to make sure you're not going to make costly mistakes, and to make sure you're at a point where you can meet your goals, whether that's retiring early or if you have to move up your retirement date for some reason. Saving as much as possible, that's got to be a huge first step, right?
It sure is. And an interesting stat that I recently ran across and we have talked about before is more than 20% of Americans older than the age of 50 have no retirement savings.
That's crazy.
So 1 in 5 have zero retirement savings.
Oh,
And if they're in a situation where they want to retire early, it's just not going to happen. They just don't have any resources. And so saving is the biggest thing. Also, recently I read in an article that more than 60% of people that are retired are worried about outliving their money. And so you've got to make sure that that you think through this adequately before you just pull the plug and stop working. The first thing I'd tell you to really consider is you've got to double check and make sure that you're maximizing your employer sponsored plans that we've talked about on the show, right? You've got to make sure that you're contributing at least enough to get the free money out of that plan. And that's typically called the match that they're given to you. A lot of people put money in a 401k and they say, okay, great, I'm putting a certain percentage away and that's fine. And I'm going to have plenty to live on. But they don't look at it on a regular basis. They don't think about the investments that are inside the plan. They don't think about increasing the amount of money that they're withholding from their paychecks when they get raises. Like, that's a very easy way to put more money away.
That's what I do. Every time I get a raise, I put all or most of it into my 401k. I increase my 401k contribution by that much.
Yep. And that's a very, very great, easy thing to do because you already didn't have the money.
You're not going to miss it.
You're not going to miss it. And so it's interesting when you think about that. The other thing is, the IRS on an annual basis steps up how much money you have the ability to save at certain ages. And so, if you're following those recommended guidelines, you're going to be better off, right? So as an example, when you're older than 50, there's catch-up contributions inside most of those plans. And so, today, if you're under the age of 50, the IRS allows you to save up to $23,000 in your retirement account if you have the standard 401k or 403b or 457. And if you're over the age of 50, you actually can throw in another $7,500. So you could throw in $30,500 a year. That's more than a lot of people make, right? Just into your retirement account. And so if you're earning well, and you're bringing home plenty of money and you're putting tons of money into savings and you're not putting that money into that retirement account, that's the first step. That's the first main thing in place to save, to be able to build that wealth and forget about it, right? Because when you're still working, you're just so busy. You're going about your daily life. 5-10 years go by and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I just put 100 or 150,000 in my account in the last 10 years. And now it's worth 300 or 400,000. That's real money that I can do something with.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to need it for retirement, especially if you want to retire early. Now, I want to go back to a stat you said. We didn't really talk about the stat. I know it's come up on previous shows, but you said more than 60% of Americans are worried they will outlive their money.
Yep.
And so I imagine you've heard that a lot from people who come in to meet with you.
Definitely.
Before they work with you or become clients, when you first talk to people, a lot of people you talk to, that's their number one concern about retirement is outliving their money, right?
That's exactly correct. It's difficult for me in many situations to push my clients to spend money when they retire, because most people that have saved well and have great nest eggs are frugal in some way. They watch every little dollar that goes in and out, and
Yep.
they've been very, very diligent over the years putting money away. And so it's sometimes even more difficult for me to say, now it's time to start spending, right? And they're still in that boat of, well, I know I've got assets, but I'm worried about outliving my money. I'm going to live, I retire at 60. I'm going to live another 30 to 35 years. And so it's definitely something that you have to have a good conversation about.
Yep.
Lots of the time, the majority of the reviews that we do are not based on investments that we're talking to clients about. They're on income and income planning, and making sure that the budget is correct, and making sure that we are taking advantage of everything we can from a tax perspective to be able to keep as much money in our clients' pockets.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge, and obviously that's a big reason to work with a financial services professional such as yourself and your team there at Jones and Associates, to make sure you have a plan in place so you don't have to worry about, am I going to have enough money to last throughout retirement? You don't have to worry about that at all, because you'll have it planned out, and you'll know, yes, I'm going to have enough money to pay the bills each month, to meet my goals, and to live my life throughout retirement. And I know you plan out quite a ways too. But retiring early can change that. You have to plan for income for longer the earlier you retire, right? I
Yep.
mean, and that's why this is a topic, isn't it?
It sure is. And, if you think about automatic savings accounts, right? Deductions that just automatically come out of your paycheck or automatically come out of your savings accounts and goes into an investment portfolio, it's just very, very powerful. Everybody says, okay, look, I wanted to buy Apple stock when it was $1 a share. I wanted to buy Nvidia. I wanted to buy, and that is clearly a situation where most people get incredibly lucky to
Oh
purchase something
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
bottom and make as much as they have. But
Right.
time is really what's on people's side, and that's the point I wanted to make. If you're in a situation where you have the ability to save on a regular basis, and this can be outside of your 401k, for most people, even on top of your 401k, depending on your income level, you do have the ability to still put more money away into retirement accounts, into a Roth IRA, or to a traditional IRA in some situations. And so, let's just think about this. If you have the ability to put, $7,000 or $8,000 away, which is kind of right in the amount that you can into both a Roth or a traditional IRA, and you do that every year, for 10 years, and you get a 7% rate of return, you got like 100 grand sitting there just from putting $500 a month away. Okay.
Wow.
And so now, okay, so that's over a 10-year period. Let's say if you started that when you're in your 20s and you've got 30 years before you retire. Now we're talking about, you have put in about 187,000 if you've done this strategy, and it's worth more like $675,000. You made $480,000 in interest. So
Wow.
what I'm trying to explain here is compounding money is all about timing. Timing when
Yes.
you're young is on your side. And it doesn't matter if you think you're going to retire, or your goal is to retire at 60 or 62 or whatever. If you just start saving early, you get this financial independence. Everybody has heard about this, and you see these 45-year-olds that are financially independent and never going to work again, and they've amassed enough money to be able to live frugally forever, right? And
Right.
so the point I'm trying to make is, how do you think they did that? It's probably with some type of automatic savings setup where they were just very diligent about paying themselves for that goal later in life. And
Yeah.
it's extremely easy to do. We do this all the time. You can change the amount that you're going to put into the account every single month, but if you can afford it, I mean, why not just push the money there? It can be accessible in certain situations, but that automatic savings, like, just You're not thinking about it anymore. It's just going every month.
It's never hitting your spending account, the account you spend money out of. And
That's
so if
right.
it never hits that account, if you have it automatically go into a savings account or an investment account for retirement or a retirement account, then, out of sight, out of mind. That's what helps me.
That's right.
If it goes into what it's like the government spending would, if it goes into the general fund, it's gone, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's the way it works. If it goes into that checking account, which I call the general fund for most families,
It's
uh,
spent.
and most individual, it's gone, right?
Yep.
It'll get spent. It gets spent. So you need to have outside savings vehicles, like you said, and you help people set that up, as you said. I think that's great, and that's another way to be able to retire sooner, retire earlier if you needed to. You have to utilize these strategies. And again, if people want to utilize these strategies, they should give you a call, get a plan in place. That number, once again, is 541-500-4321. That's 541-500-4321. Pick up the phone. Give Nick and the team there at Jones and Associates a call. It's so important to have this plan in place. It is huge. I just can't stress it enough. I mean, I'm somebody who looks back and said, "Man, I wish I would have done it. Started when I was 21, putting as much as possible away."
Well, I
I
was
would be
super
set.
lucky. I came from a financial advising family. My father was in
Yes.
the business, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, my brother. And, my dad told us from a very young age, just take 10% of your paycheck and put it away. And he helped me open a Roth IRA in, let's see, in 1990 or
Wow.
92,
Wow.
and think about that. I mean, I'm 45 years old. I've had the luxury of being able to save inside a Roth IRA for the last 25 years,
So that's all
and
tax-free money. The interest, the principal is all going to come out tax-free
I didn't understand anything about this,
once
Tony, when I
once you
started,
hit retirement age. And here's the deal: if something should happen to you, it'll go to, you can have a beneficiary designation on that account. And I want to stress, now that I know you have that account and you've had that long with all the compounding interest, Nick, I think that the beneficiary designation, I've got a name for you. You're already
Yeah, I
laughing.
bet you do. I bet
uh,
you do.
that Anthony Shore. And if you need a spelling on that, for the beneficiary designation, I am more than happy to give you my name to use on that account. That would be fine.
Clearly, Mr. Shore is not a
Um,
true fiduciary on the show, and he comes up with these ideas, listeners. So just, avoid those types of things.
yes.
Thank you for
Don't let
taking advantage
family or
of me.
friends talk you into putting them as the beneficiary on your Roth. But starting a Roth that soon, you are fortunate that you had, your dad telling you do this, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's
Yep.
great.
Well, and there's lots of small things that you can do over the years that just are very, very helpful. Some of them aren't ideal. A lot of people don't want to do some of the things that maybe we'll talk about, like work a second job. If you work a second job and you take that money and you literally just save it because all
Yep.
you're trying to do is be above board, that's a very easy strategy if you've got the time and you've got the desire to do it. And
Plus, it
it's not
doesn't have to be
ideal.
doing something you don't like to do. I mean, the gig economy, a side hustle, that's pretty common these days anyway.
Definitely. There's lots of the interesting thing is this that I found. Many of our clients, when they retire, take some time off, 3, 6 months, and then they get into the situation where they're just like, I got to have something to do. And if they don't have tons of hobbies, a lot of them go back to work part-time
Yeah.
because they like to be around people.
Yeah.
They want to continue to contribute to society.
You need to have
They
a
want
purpose.
to do fun things. They need that purpose. And guess what comes with that? A little bit of money. But they're in the situation where they probably don't need the money, so they start saving it. And then 5 years go by, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm retired. I'm living on plenty of income, and I'm saving another 20 or 30 grand a year." It's
Yeah.
and the point. I guess this is not the point of the show. The point of the show is to save before retirement, right? But
Yes.
the point I'm trying to make here is there's tons of things that you can do as a side hustle, like Tony said, that are legal, Mr. Shore, that are legal, that
Yeah.
you can make more money in and then save and put yourself in a better situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in the gig economy, there are a lot of different things you can do. I mean, if you're into golf, you can get a part-time job at the golf course, or if you like books, you can get a job at the local library or a museum if you're into art, or there are so many different things you can do. If you like people, you can be a greeter somewhere, or there are just a number of different jobs. You can be a consultant in whatever field you came out of. I know
Yep.
a lot of people do that as well.
Definitely. Definitely they do. And, the other thing that people should probably consider or can is if you're honest with yourself and you're doing a monthly budget and you actually look at what you're spending, most people have a couple of things in there that they're spending money on that they don't actually need. And these are like subscription services that they just fell into, as an example, right? Oh, I decided to sign up for that streaming app because I thought I was going to use it. And it's only $5 a month, so it's not a big deal, right? But then you have 3 or 4 of them, and then it turns into more, and then you're paying more for everything. I mean, the Netflix streaming service is amazing, right? But that's like up to $20 a month. That's like that, and that's an amazing moneymaker for that company. Think about it. That's $250 a year for one person they're getting just to have the ability to stream. And how many don't stream? A lot. So what I'm trying to say
And
is,
now every network has their own streaming service that you
right?
can subscribe to. I mean, literally, there are dozens and dozens of possible streaming services, and I know people with 12 different TV streaming services. That
And
adds up.
listeners, this is controversial, and I really want you to continue to do it. But gym memberships are a really, really big thing too.
Oof.
People have gym memberships and they never go.
Yeah.
And they just continue to pay it for 5 years because
They might
think
forget,
they're going to go and they want to go, but
or
never
they might
go.
forget it's even on there.
Yep.
I've forgotten about different monthly charges. It's like, why are we still paying this monthly charge? We don't even use that anymore.
Yep. Yep. Or how about, just all these little things. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but all these little things just really add up. Think about if you just stop at your favorite coffee shop every day of the week, and you're spending $5 on a coffee, and that's $25 a week. And that's what, 200 to 250 bucks a month. That's like 2,500 to $3,000 a year. Well, if you just stay home and,
A $3,000 a year raise sounds good, doesn't it?
have a 50-cent cup of coffee from your house, and
So
save some of that money.
That's the way.
Readjust your budget is the point.
Nick, if you look at it like, hey, I'm going to give myself a $3,000 a year raise,
Yes,
by not going out to coffee every day.
that's
I mean,
right.
think of it that way. Who doesn't want a $3,000 a year raise? That's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then when you're thinking about the budget, and I'm not just trying to give people a hard time here, I'm in this fault as well. My wife and I sit down regularly and think through this. We have 2 sons, and there's all kinds of different things that shouldn't be in the budget that we have to adjust on a regular basis. But the other things are debt. If you have very high interest debt, you need to reassess that and figure out if you can find some cheaper situations. I'm not a fan of having too much debt if you can't afford it. But I mean, there's lots of programs that are out there that are balance transfer programs to have a lower rate, for instance, or when the banks refinance. And here's what's going to happen. We're in the situation now where rates are starting to go down, and they're going to continue to go down. So you're not locked into anything forever, most likely. So you should think through that and approach your banks and try to get a better deal than what you're in today.
Yeah, for sure. And so obviously there's a lot you can do, especially if all of a sudden you think you want to move up your retirement date. There are a lot of strategies out there, and you've been covering quite a few of them. What's another possible strategy that people could take if they want to maybe be able to retire a bit earlier?
So one of the biggest conversations that we have, if you're going to retire early, is talking about both healthcare and Social Security before you retire.
Sure.
And how the numbers are going to be affected, and how that works out. We use, you've talked about it, and we've talked about it on the show a bunch, Tony, software programs, maximizing your Social Security maximization reports to outline this to clients and to prospects, right? But I have a lot of people that come to our firm as prospects that are no longer working and have retired early and are struggling pulling money off their investments and haven't started drawing their Social Security yet. And the reason why is because there's great marketing around Social Security. And they think, well, I got to wait till I'm 67, or I got to wait till I'm 70 to be able to draw. And that is sometimes the correct stance to take, but sometimes not. If you do a break-even analysis of how much you could take from Social Security when you draw it early versus taking it at that full retirement age of, say, 67, or even waiting until you're 70, depending on your situation, it could make total sense to draw it early or not. And so, a lot of reasons to take money earlier include you need money now. Instead of drawing your own assets, you're not working any longer. Maybe you should start taking it, or if you have health issues that could shorten your life expectancy, and you don't anticipate living long enough to break even with that break even point, that's something to consider. Most of the time when I sit down with new clients, their break even point for Social Security, taking it as early as they can at the age of 62, or waiting till 67, their full retirement age, is somewhere in the 12 to 15 year break even range. Okay. So late 70s, early 80s, before they actually make any more money from waiting and delaying to take Social Security.
Sure.
Okay. And so all of those little things need to be part of the conversation. And there's lots of details.
But to figure out your own, but it varies, and everybody's situation is different. Like your neighbor or your buddy or your coworker will say, well, I'm going to file it this time. Or you talk to your grandparents or your parents. Well, the best I filed here, and that's when you should file. Nope. Everybody's situation is different, and you might have a different break-even point. So our listeners and viewers out there might be saying, well, Nick, how do I get my break-even point? How do I know what that is for me? And the Social Security maximization report is individualized, and it goes over 20,000 calculations to figure out what is the best strategy for you and what each strategy will mean, what you'll get now versus then. Here's the break-even point. If you have a spouse, here's what you have to consider for spousal strategies. I mean, there's a lot more to it, to filing for Social Security, and I've learned that from you on many of our past shows where we focused on Social Security. So that maximization report is really the answer to this question. And I know people, at least they should be asking, well, what's my break-even point? What's my situation going to look like for Social Security? So to get that report, how do they do that?
So they can just go to jonesfinancialtalk.com and request that information from us. Now, if they're already drawing Social Security, they've already made the decision, but this is going to be mostly for the people that are maybe between the ages of 55 and 62 that haven't made that choice yet, or even in their early 60s and thinking that they're going to wait till they're 67 or 70 to draw. Sure. I hear that all the time. And I'm not trying to say that that the decision that you have made to delay is wrong. I'm just saying, have you heard an alternative situation that maybe would make sense? And you're right, Tony. Depending on many factors, if you have any dependent children or younger spouses or things like that, it's totally going to change the conversation.
Sure.
But the point is, don't just have it set in your head that you're going to wait for this for some specific reason.
Yeah. Have the report run. And we're out of time, unfortunately, Nick. But before we go, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you to set up that no-charge consultation and to get that report run.
Sure thing. They can just give us a call here in the Rogue Valley at 541-500-4321, or go to jonesfinancialtalk.com and request that information right online, Tony.
All right. And that does it for today's episode of Jones Financial Talk.